Okay, so like imagine this, you're about to have this talk with your boss, maybe about a raise,
Hmm.
or you need to have like a seriously tough conversation with a friend. And you know your heart's racing, you get sweaty palms, we've all been there, right? These are exactly what we call crucial conversations. And that is precisely what we are diving into today.
Yeah, it really is amazing how often these pop up in our lives, and they make a huge difference in how things go. So, we're using this book, Crucial Conversations, as our guide
Mm.
to help you navigate those situations when everything feels so important and emotions get really intense.
And you know what? This book starts out with this really funny story about a totally messed up Dunkin' Donuts order.
Hmm.
And it's so relatable because, I mean, we've all been there, right? Like you get frustrated when even something small goes wrong. But here's where it gets interesting. The book uses this story to show how our gut reactions can totally hijack a conversation. You know, that fight or flight response.
It's like our caveman brain just takes over, but instead of facing a saber-toothed tiger, we're snapping at the barista. Or we just shut down completely and avoid talking altogether.
Oh, totally. And think about it for a sec. Has your gut reaction ever almost made you say something that you would totally regret it, especially in like one of those really crucial conversations?
It happens all the time. The book says that just recognizing those patterns, that's the very first step to actually choosing a better way to respond.
Instead of just like going with your first reaction.
It's not about pretending you don't have emotions, it's more about knowing what they are, so you can decide how you really want to respond. One thing that can really mess up these conversations are what they call in the book dangerous questions.
Oh, yeah. These are those questions that seem harmless, but can really derail the entire conversation. The book breaks them down into 4 types: leading, vague, negative, and compound.
Let's start with those leading questions. They kind of nudge the person toward a specific answer. For example, imagine asking a witness, "You didn't really see the assault happen clearly, did you?" That plants a seed of doubt and could even change their memory.
Whoa, I never even thought of it like that. It sounds so innocent, but it's actually really manipulative.
It really is. And even in everyday talks, we might do this without realizing. Instead of asking, "Did you go to your girlfriend's house after school?" You could say, "Where did you go after school and who did you see?" That opens things up without leading them to one answer.
That's a great example. Now, what about those vague questions? The book mentions, how do you feel about war?
I
As an
just want to
example.
see why that's a problem.
Where do you even start to answer that?
Exactly. Vague questions are unclear and don't give you direction. It's like asking someone to describe the sky. There's just too much there. It makes people ramble and get confused, and you're unlikely to get to the real issue.
Okay, so let's move on to negative questions. These seem like the trickiest ones to spot. The book has this crazy, complicated example. So, am I not correct in assuming that you have never not said you don't support America? Guy. It's like a mental gymnastics routine.
It really is. And that's the problem. Negative questions are confusing and make you think too hard. Instead of getting a clear answer, they just make people feel flustered and unsure. It's always better to keep your language simple and direct, especially when it's an important conversation.
So true. Lastly, we have those compound questions, which honestly sound more like an interrogation than a conversation. It's like, where did you go and how much money did you take?
The issue with those compound questions is they overload the other person with like a bunch of things to answer at once. They might only answer one part and leave the rest hanging, and it makes them feel attacked instead of like you're actually trying to have a dialogue.
Okay, so we've covered what not to do, which is a great place to start. But what are some good alternatives? What kinds of questions should we be asking instead to have a more productive and respectful conversation?
That's where the idea of creating a safe space for dialogue comes in. Imagine you're in a conversation and you feel attacked or judged. You're going to shut down and get defensive, right?
Totally. When you feel safe, you're more likely to open up and really share your thoughts and feelings honestly.
Exactly. So instead of those dangerous questions, the book suggests asking open-ended questions, questions that encourage the person to share everything. It's about replacing judgment with curiosity and really trying to understand where they're coming from.
I love that example they give about talking to a teenager. Instead of, did you go to your girlfriend's house after school? Which is like a yes or no question. Try asking, where did you go after school and what did you do? It encourages a more detailed response and opens the door for a real connection.
It's a small change, but it makes a huge difference. So, welcome back to our deep dive into crucial conversations. We were just talking about creating a safe space, but what about when you need to actually say what you think, especially when it's different from the other person? That's where this thing called the state technique comes in.
Okay, state. That sounds interesting. What does that even stand for? And how can it help us when we're trying to say our own opinion?
So, state, it's actually an acronym, which stands for share your facts, tell your story, ask for others' paths, talk tentatively, and encourage testing. It's like a roadmap to help you say what you think, while still being open to the other person's side.
Okay, let's break that down. Starting with share your facts. It seems pretty straightforward, but is there a certain way we should be giving information, especially in these crucial conversations?
Definitely. Sharing your facts means sticking to objective info, like actual data or specific things you've seen. So instead of saying you're always late,
Mhm.
which is kind of a general statement and an attack, you could say the meeting was at 10 a.m. and you got there at 10:15. See the difference?
Yeah, it's about giving the facts.
Hmm.
Without making things worse by throwing in emotional accusations,
Mhm.
it keeps the conversation grounded in reality.
Exactly. Now, once you've given the facts, the next step is tell your story. This is where you connect those facts to your own experience and how you see things.
So using that same example, you might say, when you were late to the meeting, it made me feel like it wasn't important to you. You're sharing your feelings without blaming them, right?
Exactly. It's about saying what you think and feel in a way that helps them understand and maybe even relate to you. Remember, crucial conversations aren't about winning or losing. They're about understanding each other and finding a way forward together.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all works together. So we've shared our facts and told our story. What's next? Ask for others' paths.
That's right. This is where the real power of talking things out comes in. After you've shared your side, it's so important to really try and understand theirs. You could say, "Can you help me understand why you were late for the meeting?" You're giving them a chance to explain, to share their facts and their own story.
Wow, that's powerful. Going from that I'm right, you're wrong thing to actually being curious about what they went through. But I gotta admit, sometimes it's hard to stay open-minded, especially when I feel strongly about something.
I hear you. And that's where talk tentatively comes in. This reminds us to present our views as possibilities, not absolutes. So instead of, this is the only way to do it, which can just shut down the conversation. I was thinking maybe we could try this. What are your thoughts?
Ah, so it's about being confident in what you think, but also humble enough to know that you might not have all the answers, and that working together often leads to better solutions.
Exactly. And that brings us to the last part of state, encourage testing. This means inviting the other person to challenge your ideas, to offer different ways of doing things, and to try different approaches.
So instead of getting defensive when someone disagrees, you actually encourage them to find flaws in what you're saying. That seems kind of counterintuitive, but also super valuable.
It is counterintuitive, but think about it. When you're open to feedback and willing to test things out, you create an environment where the best ideas can win, no matter who came up with them.
I love that. It's like embracing the idea that someone else might have a better solution, or that you can both come up with something even better. By working together,
Exactly. This state technique is all about working together and finding solutions that work for everyone. But even with the best communication techniques, these crucial conversations can get really emotional. We need ways to stay calm when things get heated.
you're right, it's easy to say stay calm, but actually doing it in the moment is way harder. What are some practical tips for actually managing our emotions?
The book has some really helpful strategies. One of the simplest but most effective is to focus on your body. When we get stressed or upset, our bodies react. Our heart might beat faster, our breathing gets shallow, or we tense up. By noticing these physical cues, we can start to break that fight or flight response and get back in control.
So it's like noticing those signs of stress
Hmm.
and then taking a moment to relax, maybe taking some deep breaths or just physically relaxing our shoulders.
Exactly. It's about bringing yourself back to the present moment and stopping that flood of stress hormones that can make you think unclearly and react without thinking.
That makes sense. Are there any other strategies that can help us stay centered, especially in the middle of a tough conversation?
Another powerful technique is to reframe the situation. Instead of seeing the conversation as a battle, try to see it as a chance to learn and grow.
Wow, that's a whole different way of looking at it. Instead of trying to prove our point or defend our ego, we can approach the conversation wanting to understand the other person and maybe even learn something new about ourselves.
It's about turning that feeling of threat into curiosity and possibility. And remember, it's always okay to take a break if things get too intense. Sometimes stepping away for a few minutes to calm down and gather your thoughts can be really helpful.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with saying, I need a few minutes to think about this. We
Right.
can talk about this later.
Yeah.
It shows that you're self-aware and you want to engage in a way that's productive.
Yeah.
But what about those times when a crucial conversation has gone bad? Maybe you said something you regret or the relationship is damaged. Can these techniques help fix those situations?
That's a great question, and thankfully the book talks about that too. Even with the best intentions and skills, sometimes things go wrong. So in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how crucial conversations helps us to apologize, effectively rebuild trust, and find solutions that work for everyone.
So welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about how to handle those crucial conversations, with grace and skill. But even when we try our best, sometimes things can still go wrong. So in this final part, let's explore how we can deal with those situations where things might have gotten a bit heated, feelings were hurt, or we just need to find a solution that works for everyone.
You're right, sometimes those crucial conversations can leave us feeling stuck like we've hit a wall. But the great thing about crucial conversations is that it gives us a way to not only prevent those situations, but also to navigate them when they happen. It emphasizes that even when things get messy, we can still repair the damage, rebuild trust, and find solutions that work for everyone.
Okay, so let's say a crucial conversation went south and you said something you regret. What's the best way to apologize? Should we just say, I'm sorry, and hope for the best?
Well, being sincere is super important, but the book goes deeper into the art of apologizing effectively. It's not about making excuses or downplaying the impact of our words. Instead, it's about taking full responsibility for what we did and expressing genuine remorse.
So instead of saying something like, I'm sorry if I offended you, which kind of shifts the blame, we said, I'm truly sorry for what I said. It was insensitive and hurtful, and I take full responsibility for my words.
Exactly. You're showing empathy and acknowledging how your words affected the other person. A sincere apology can really help mend things and start the process of rebuilding trust.
And talking about rebuilding trust, that can be tough, especially if something big happened. It's not like trust magically comes back overnight, right?
You're absolutely right. It takes time and consistent effort. The book stresses how important it is to match our actions with our words. It's not enough to just say we're sorry, we have to show it through our actions and prove that we're committed to changing.
So if we promise to be more mindful of our tone or to listen more carefully, we need to follow through on those promises consistently. It's like rebuilding a bridge, brick by brick, proving we're trustworthy through what we do over time.
Precisely. It's a process that needs patience, consistency, and a genuine desire to fix the relationship. And remember, rebuilding trust works both ways. It takes effort and willingness from both people.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about finding solutions in those crucial conversations. It's easy to get stuck in a back and forth where each person is pulling in their own direction. How can we move towards a resolution that works for everyone?
The book introduces this idea of mutual purpose, which is all about figuring out the shared goals and interests behind the disagreement. It's about asking, what do we both want to achieve here? When we understand that common ground, it's much easier to come up with solutions that meet everyone's needs.
That makes total sense. It's like that saying, focus on interests, not positions. Instead of digging in our heels and defending our initial stance, we can explore the reasons and needs behind them and find creative ways to satisfy them.
Exactly. The book gives a great example of two coworkers who disagree about a project deadline. One wants to stick to the original plan while the other wants more time. Instead of getting into a power struggle, they step back and look at the reasons behind their positions.
So maybe the coworker who wants to stick to the deadline is worried about letting a client down, and the one who wants more time is facing unexpected obstacles or needs more time to do quality work.
Right. By understanding those deeper reasons, they can start brainstorming solutions that address both concerns. Maybe they negotiate a bit more time, delegate some tasks, or find ways to streamline the process.
It's about finding that balance where everyone feels heard and their needs are met, even if it means being flexible and compromising.
And that's where the book's emphasis on having lots of options comes in. It encourages us to brainstorm many possibilities before picking a solution. This helps us avoid getting stuck on one idea and opens up the door to more creative and beneficial outcomes.
I love that. It's like expanding the pie instead of fighting over crumbs. By generating multiple options, we can find solutions we wouldn't have thought of before. It turns the conversation from a win-lose situation into one where everyone can win.
Absolutely. It's about approaching the situation with a mindset of abundance and collaboration, knowing that there are often many ways to succeed.
This whole deep dive into crucial conversations has been so insightful. We've learned how to approach tough conversations with a calm mind, clear communication, and a genuine desire to understand and be understood. But what I find truly inspiring is the broader vision of a world where everyone has these skills.
You're right. Imagine workplaces where conflicts are solved constructively, families where differences are handled with respect, and societies where tough conversations lead to understanding and progress instead of division and gridlock.
It's a beautiful vision. And it all starts with each of us taking responsibility for how we communicate, embracing the principles we've talked about, and committing to turning those crucial conversations into opportunities for growth, connection, and positive change.
It's amazing how these skills can be used in every part of our lives. Whether we're dealing with a disagreement with someone we love, negotiating a deal at work, or talking about a big social issue, the ideas in crucial conversations can help us communicate better, build stronger relationships, and create a more harmonious world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about how these principles can change your own life. How would your relationships, your work, and even the world around you be different if you mastered the art of crucial conversations? The power to create that positive change is in each of us. Go out there and communicate with courage, clarity, and compassion.